All right. So for those of you who are watching us on LinkedIn Live, sorry for the brief intermission. We had one of the channels that we're streaming to that was set to private, so I had to go change that real quick and make sure that it's set to public now. So I think what were we talking about? You had posited a
I don't know.
yeah, I don't know if we want to start with that or go back to talk or maybe move on to a different topic. But
yeah,
I
I
think
think
the
I
notion
threw a
was
hand grenade in there, didn't I? So you can
yeah,
decide whether you want to
that's
catch it
fine.
and throw it
And
into the
normally I would
bucket
have
or
been
not.
ready for the hand grenade, but right in the middle of the hand grenade, I'd realized we were not streaming live to one of the channels that I had set up. So I was a wee bit distracted. So yeah. So
Good.
all right, so let's go from there. Why don't you go ahead and tell that story again real quick, and then
Okay.
I'll give you a real reaction this time
Okay,
instead of a mortified one.
set faces ready for stunned at my
Yeah,
live reaction.
exactly.
Okay, so we were talking. Obviously, we've been talking a lot about AI and the use of AI to obviously to help developers to be able to be more productive, et cetera, et cetera. Just quick recap for those of you joining us. We've gone from both ends of the spectrum, and then we were talking initially about how PewDiePie, from back in the day, has resurfaced in my feed anyway with his efforts to be able to fine tune a large language model to do apparently really well on coding tasks, and good for him. My intuition is that he's not a career developer, and so
No,
that's
yeah.
exciting that he's managed to be able to do that. And then the other end of the spectrum, we mentioned as well that Andrej Karpathy is using agents that he's writing to help improve projects that he's working on, and in an autonomous way. Super exciting. So everybody across the board is going to and is getting this bump. The question comes up, and I think Ed, you raised this, was about trust, and about this is kind of the tension that we've got now. Is like, how much do I just say I'm just going to one-shot vibe code the next Facebook clone or whatever it happens to be, and the issue with that is trust. And so I posited this thought experiment, I guess, that I don't know I necessarily agree or disagree with, but I just wanted to sort of throw it in here to the conversation. If I'm writing code, I'm Python, right? Because that's me. And I do pip install or UV add or whatever it is, and I get myself some libraries and I work with those libraries. I haven't looked at the code inside of those libraries most times. Sometimes they're my code, but anyway, most times it's not. And I guess I trust those things. What's the difference between that and me going in and saying to an AI, okay, this is what we're building. I need you to build this, that bit and the other bit. Now, right now, if this was production code, I'd be really clear here. Then I am going to be scanning through that code. I'm going to be working on that code. It's going to be working with me to write that. But when do we get to the point where it's okay to complete vibe code one shot a solution, and we have the same level of trust that we have with pip install? That's my question.
Yeah, I mean, it's here's my hot take on that, and ironically, it's not as much of a hand grenade for me specifically, or now by extension, Ed, because this is exactly the reason why our founder Jonathan created Brokk, because there were far too many hand grenades out there, and vibe coding. While I think it is okay to turn over the keys to the AI and say, write me a thing. And then what your output is, it's not, I would say trust is part of it, but also visibility is a huge part of that. So can I see what's going on inside the LM? Now you throw something at something like a Copilot or into Antigravity or into Claude Code, and it just kind of whizzes by, and you're done. Now you can go back and you can code review that after it's written 10 million lines of garbage, or you could have something that kind of where you can let it do the coding, because in my opinion, and I think this is something that is shared by most of the folks, at least at Brokk, the turning the keys over to do things like writing the code is not as big of a deal as just giving up full control. I don't think I'll ever be the type of person that'll be able to say, yeah, I'm just going to YOLO this thing and then, push to production and not have to think about that. Because ironically, what you get then is something like Moltbot, where bad things happen. And then you get acquired by Meta, apparently. So
Sounds good to
I don't
me.
know if you caught that earlier. There's something that popped up in the news just yesterday. Is the guys who wrote Moltbook now work for Meta, which I thought, that's an interesting item. But yeah, I agree. Trust is an element. I also think that being able to guide it, or at least have what I would think of it this way: if you're debugging something, you put a breakpoint in, right? To have it stop at a point that in a predetermined in your code to where you believe something will pump out message, or you put a debug message in. I like to have that level. I like the idea of having that level of control. I don't care if it writes a bunch of code. I just want to be able to go, okay, as it's thinking, I want it to go, hey, here's what I'm going to do. Okay, great. Plan mode, the invention of plan mode, big thumbs up for that. But I also don't want to. I don't know if I'll ever be comfortable with just kind of YOLOing something and letting the AI do whatever. Maybe there'll be a point, but I mean, never say never, right?
I think there will be a point, if I'm honest with you, but but that could be 10 years from now. But we'll track what's going forward. I wrote an article recently. I have to remind myself what my own article was titled, which I'll do momentarily. When when the model is the machine. This now is, maybe this is another hand grenade for you, but I am sort of interested in the idea that the execution environment of the future actually is the model. And so, sorry, this sort of like takes the ending of what you were just saying and says, no, it's not going to happen tomorrow, and it's not going to happen, in 6 months' time or even a year's time. But there are indicators out there where you can start to point to the fact that in, I don't know, let's say 5 years' time from now, we might be running software actually inside of these models rather than the models running inside of operating systems. The model essentially becomes the operating system. I think that's super interesting and maybe derails the entire conversation. But and at that point, so I have this demo that I show in that article where with today's technology, it's a web server where when you enter the HTTP URL to go to the web server, you also add in the description of the software that you want, and the web server responds with the software that you want, and it never existed before it loaded. So, okay. Right now, this actually works with things like the demo which I do, which is a language translation app. So I say I want to have a translation app, and in about 30 seconds, 40 seconds time, that appears on screen. The agent that I've actually got behind the scenes is super simplistic. It only has two tools. The one tool is to create HTML code, and the other one is to update HTML code. There's loads of things you could do to this to actually make this better and more efficient, but I don't do these intentionally because it's just a very quick thought experiment. But then up on the screen comes, in this particular case, this language translation app, and it's got, every time you run it, it looks different, right? Because it's coded on the fly. And on one side of the screen usually is an input box where it auto detects the language, and on the output side is the output box. Now it has no JavaScript framework. There's no JavaScript running essentially. What happens is I type in one side and I click the button. It sends a message to the agent to say, hey, the user has typed this in. As far as the UI is concerned, it has no idea why that's useful. And then it takes that, it puts it into the agent, and the agent says, well, okay, well, if a user's typed that in, then I think that you should update this element on the screen with this output. And it's slow, but it works. And you actually end up with a full functioning translation app. And the entire thing is running in the context of an LLM. And that kind of blows my mind. It's slow. It's really inefficient. It's melting ice caps with the amounts of tokens it's generating. But that's interesting to me.
But it's getting it done. Yeah. That's the key factor. And I think the element there that is also key is you're you're observing in that particular case, but and now I'm kind of coming over to your side of the fence a little bit and saying, maybe there is a a space in there where I would be okay with certain kinds of things that just kind of, you set it on its course, and then you come back, make a little Stargate reference, and you come back 1,000 years later, and ta-da. Or in this case, 1,000 milliseconds later, and ta-da. So yeah, I mean that is, to me, that's kind of like the promise, right? That it's like the time saver. But then then that brings up that topic we were talking about a while ago, or earlier, Ed, is like, what is that really equating into these days for developers? Now, let's just say you achieve the goal of 10x developer from being a 1x developer, and my experience has been that you now have 100. Now you can go to the 100x workload.
You don't get 10 days back. You fill
yeah.
those extra. You fill in the time.
Not to diverge into the philosophical outcome of being able to do that level of work, but it is, I think, it's thought provoking 100%. So
yeah.
All right. What was next on our list of topics, gentlemen?
I think that quite possibly we have mentioned one thing on the list of topics, and then I keep diverging the conversation somewhere else. So
no, that's fine. That's the format of the show. It's we're here to talk about all things AI and more. It's the and more part that is with the 3 dots. That does equate to something. Yeah, so I did touch on this, and I'd love to hear thoughts. And this is more not a thought of like, how do you feel about that it happened, but what do you think let's speculate on what the reasoning behind it. And that is the fact that everybody has been tracking Claudebot, or then OpenClaw had a little stage in there where it was Molt, which produced Moltbook. And for the folks that don't know what that is essentially someone vibe coded a Reddit style message board, and you kind of talked about the message boards thing a second ago, and it was just a bunch of AIs. And they would communicate with her and with each other, and then the stuff that popped out, had this air of AGI to it. So a lot of people were like, "Oh my God, we've achieved AGI," but then it turned out that it was actually just folks that had written their Claude bots, and that they were sending their Claude bots into this arena to have conversations with other people's Claude bots. And then fast forward to yesterday, and Meta just acquired the guys that wrote that, and all the code associated with Moltbot. And I find that equally as thought provoking, because I'm thinking, what would Meta do with something like Moltbot? Because we've touched on a number of things that kind of flirt with the idea of where does the training data come from for future LLMs, and that's kind of my hot take on it. Is like, I think that there's a myriad of angles that could be where if you were a company and you acquired, and you said, "Oh, we need to acquire Moltbot," why would you do that? So, Ed, I'm gonna pick on you and see what your thoughts are, because I know Mike's got him. He's
I have a theory based on looking at something that we all went through together with Custom GPT Store, right?
GPTS.
Remember,
way back in the day? I made a T-shirt store.
Yeah, we were going to create custom GPTs. We were all going to get paid for it, and everyone rushed and created all these things. My theory went like this: you cannot possibly put in a lab all the iterations that human creativity and all the use case scenarios, the fringe use case scenarios, down to the personalization components. You just can't lab that out at scale. So if you're looking at this and just saying, okay, well, that's one page. If you go into the meta scenario, and you're thinking about the exponential growth of agents, lowering the barrier of entry, where using the democratization of these tools and the average person being able to create agentic workflows, training that still has to come down to, well, we can't simulate all of this. Where do we get the real creativity to spawn? Maybe from all of those people, right? And maybe then
Yeah.
we have created a petri dish of being able to mine from there. Or the other component is, if everyone's living in these virtualized environments where they have all these automated agents out there, then that's a completely different world. And Meta wants to be the aggregator of that at scale. Again, I think it comes down to, you can't possibly think of all the use cases and the randomization of what people will use these tools for. So that's where I'll pause, because that goes down. That just opens up.
Yeah, no, there's a couple of rabbit holes we can jump into there. I think I don't know. I'm trying to keep away from the more dystopian viewpoint of what you could possibly do with Moltbook and one of the world's largest advertising agencies. I keep thinking of, I don't know, have you guys ever seen that movie Ready Player One? Where there's that scene where there's that scene where he says, we've our scientists have figured out that we can commoditize 93% of the viewer's viewpoint before inducing seizures. And I'm thinking, is that what this is? I don't know. I mean, it's like I said, it's a more dystopian take, but I do find it it's interesting because you go from Claudebot, who is now owned by Anthropic, and Moltbook, written with Claudebot, who's now been acquired by Meta, and it's like people are just scooping up everything, and
so
I'm just
it's
like,
OpenClaw is OpenAI, right?
Yeah, that they were did I say did I not say Anthropic? No, it was OpenAI. You're right, OpenAI, not Anthropic. I got it. Yeah, sorry. That's correct. It was OpenAI, which is very, very interesting to me as well. I mean, now I do think that Claudebot is, while I have yet to dip my toe into that arena, and a lot of it is because I spent 13 years as a security engineer, and I'm terrified of anything that giving external access or access to anything like that. But eventually, I'll figure out how to build an ironclad sandbox, or as ironclad as I can. Maybe an air gap network that I'll stick it in and and let it go to ham and see what happens. So.
So my take on this, and I think you're right. I mean, both of these things are sort of the same kind of thing, right? So you got Moltbook and OpenClaw. These projects came into existence pretty rapidly, right? And as you suggested there that Moltbook was vibe coded. I have no reason to believe that's not the case, but I don't know. The idea that, Meta is an enormous company, of course. They have a vast amount of data. They've got all kinds of data for training and all that kind of stuff. The idea that this would technically move them forward very much, I would be suspicious of that, because I'm sure they've got hundreds of engineers that could probably whip up something very similar very quickly. In fact, they probably already have, because essentially you're talking about a social network for agents. The whole idea of agentic web, super fascinated by that. Let's unpack that at some point. I honestly, and I'm not trying to be cynical here, but I think that this is far more. It's sort of like an attention/marketing play. I don't want to downplay. It's an acquire, right? They're hiring the people. How do you find pockets of really forward-thinking people who are trying to sort of push the boundaries of what agents can do, and their thought leadership, if you want to say that, of what's possible? People who are spending time actively thinking about what the future is going to look like, they're the valuable people, right? And so you want to snap them up and you want to bring them in. So first of all, they want to snap them up, they want to bring them into the company, and they want to basically just add them as a catalyst to everything that they're doing. And secondly, again, not being too cynical about this, but both OpenClaw and Moltbook, to a slightly lesser extent, caught everybody's attention. Everybody's talking about them. It's probably worth it just from the marketing alone. Just the fact that we're talking about it now, that's a thing as well. And I don't. That's not a bad thing. But yeah, I mean, look at the when the I can never remember his name. I'm so sorry. But the chap who did OpenClaw, he goes and starts at OpenAI, and the picture is of him and Sam Altman shaking hands with a whole massive team of people behind him. That's why they did that, for that photograph.
The photo op. Yeah, that makes sense.
why
I didn't
not?
even think of that angle.
Well,
Why
you're
not?
you're
I'm not
not
doing
wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes complete sense to me. Yeah, I mean, in all honesty, as you were going through that take, I was thinking back to earlier in our conversation, which unfortunately some people didn't get to witness, but it'll be in future videos. What is that democratization angle? It's like, okay, well, for the first time in, I don't know, a billion forever, the barrier to entry for getting into anything that involves coding has been significantly lowered, which means all the folks that were scared of the math, scared of the time sitting in front of a compiler, or just didn't want to invest it, that creative energy is now going to come to bear. It's kind of like, again, I'm going to go back to the 3D printing analogy. It's like when we brought micro manufacturing down to a level where people could build things inside their own home with a nominal investment of $300 to $500 or less than that if you want to build the whole 3D printer yourself. The whole makers market opened up, and now we have people doing manufacturing printer farms where they're putting out useful items. I mean, and yeah, there was a fair share of like, we're printing a bunch of fan service stuff that isn't worth more than oh, that's cute. But now you go to any's Maker's Mart and it's filled with useful things, and we're right at like that inflection point where
but not everybody has a 3D printer on their desktop yet.
Right.
So the interesting metric I'm trying to figure out is, we see the ARR numbers, they're going exponentially up, right? It's like, hey, $100 million ARR, seemingly overnight. Adoption and usage is one thing, unique users is another. How many people are just using the tool? How many a few population using the tools more? And I think that the hockey stick scenario comes when you have widespread user numbers starting to exponentially grow. And those are the numbers I want to see, because then we can have the democratization conversation with the gravity comes in.
Yeah, and that's where Claudebot, I mean, I think really hit the sweet spot. I mean, it relegated what would ostensibly be more complicated tasks to essentially writing a markdown file, which is not much different than writing a document. And that
everybody wanted to play. Right?
Yeah, that lower. I mean, I personally just wish it had come with some guardrails, but that's just my take on that. So.
But do you know what? If it had have come with guardrails, you wouldn't have heard about it.
That's true.
Because it pushed the buttons of people like you and I in terms of security, and it also ended up doing amazing things. And I'm sure that some people have gotten in trouble from the security in their organization for running it, and that's the cost that
their credit card companies, because of the amount of
Can I expense the Mac Mini, please?
I know, right? I want a farm of those. So
it's just it was a point in time, and it ruffled some feathers, and you have to ruffle feathers to actually get some innovation sometimes.
I mean, you look all the way back to Henry Ford. I mean, he was not a popular guy by any stretch of the imagination, but we went from cars being relegated to only the most wealthy among us to manufacturing them in the millions, and now they're kind of just like a staple of life. So yeah, I mean, I think this is we definitely might be in the cotton gin phase right now too. I keep trying to figure out where we are. Have you guys seen the Gartner technology adoption curve, where it kind of looks like a sine wave, and there's this phase there where halfway through it like craters out, where that's where everybody's just like doom and death, and I'm still looking at that going, where are we living on that curve right now? Because I feel like there's an equidistant amount of people, or equal amount of people, that are both for and against the whole do we move faster? Do we move slower? I mean, I know that PC gamers right now are unhappy, but that's because there's no RAM. So
Because there's no RAM.
Do they have graphics cards now?
Yeah. Well, they have RAM. Everything has RAM. That was the thing I was telling my family. I was like, you have to realize that everything has RAM. So, it's not just going to be graphics cards or actual sticks of RAM. It's going to be refrigerators and televisions and everything. So we'll catch up though. It's just I think that's just a matter of time before we kind of that market equals out a little bit. It's not like it hasn't happened before with the crypto mining. So
yeah, that's true.
All right. Well, we've covered a ton of stuff. I really appreciate you sticking through the break, the intermission, the forced intermission that we had to go through. This a lot of topics covered here. And I think we're about 2 minutes to the top of the hour. So I think I'm going to wrap it up here. Any last minute comments from Ed, Mike?
Keep building. Don't be afraid of the machine.
Keep building. Be very afraid of the machine.
I'm going to go with, what are we building something? All right. Well, thanks a lot, guys. This has been a blast, and I'm looking forward to the next one. I'm Dylan with Brokk.ai, and this is, I guess this side would be Ed, also with Brokk.ai, and Mike, if you want to take yourself out as well.
Yeah, for sure. You want me to take myself out? What do you say? Hey, yeah. Well, so yes, I have been Mike. I work for AWS. Opinions are very much my own. But yeah, I really enjoy working in this space. And so yeah, hey, if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn. It's probably the best place to do that.
Absolutely. Same here. And you can come find me on YouTube, Brokk on the Brokk.ai YouTube site. I'm on LinkedIn as well. You probably, this live is attached to my LinkedIn account right now. And if you are interested in getting started in AI coding, I would highly encourage you to come make a journey over to Brokk.ai. Download the latest version of Brokk, whether that's in VS Code or Zed or the TUI that we just released, or the Brokk code editor. And while you're there, have a look at the power rankings. If you're a seasoned LLM developer, I highly encourage you to check out our Brokk power rankings. And with that, I'm going to say adios and thanks for being with us.
Adios.